Welcome to week 3. This is exciting. Today we're going to be talking about the writing process and the writing an argument outline worksheet. That's a mouthful. All of it's excellent information, and I'm super excited to get it started for you. We're going to jump right in. So let's go ahead and do share screen. Select the PowerPoint and get it opened up. Clicking slideshow from beginning. There we go. All right, and just to get us ready, let's make sure that I have done share sound. So many little things that have to be done to make sure that we're all able to access the information. So we're beginning today with our Stephen King quote. This one is on your syllabus, but I repeated it here. Just remember that Dumbo didn't need the feather. The magic was in him. And that is a very, very true statement. And I only flipped the screen forward because I was wondering why Dumbo wasn't flying anymore. We need Dumbo to be flying. So there he's flying. That makes me happy. So now we can go ahead and move forward. We're going to begin today with a video by this guy named Brian Johnson, and it is Philosopher's Notes, his thoughts on the book on Writing by Stephen King. Keep this on my desk. I believe I have a copy in my office and I have a copy in my home office. Excellent book. When I was working on my master's degree, this text was a textbook. And I remember seeing it on my syllabus and thinking, oh, Stephen King, I don't want to read anything by Stephen King. But then I dug in and I read the book because I had to. I'm a nerd like that, so I do what I'm supposed to for school. I read it and I fell in love with the book. His writing style, the things that he has to teach, the things that he shares about his own life. It's a very personal read. It's a very, here's what I do it if you want to read. And so I know what I took from it. So I came across this video where Brian Johnson's going to talk about what he took from the On Writing book. And he makes some excellent points, and those are some things that I want to listen to him talk about, but then discuss. Well, we're not going to actually discuss because I'm the only one talking. I'm going to reiterate those things that he is saying when we get to that point. All right. That didn't work out the way I was hoping to. Here we are. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start this video. Let me make sure. Yes, we are still recording. Okay. Thought I clicked something. I clicked the wrong thing. It's all good. Here we go.
Hi, this is Brian. Welcome back to Philosopher's Notes TV. Today we've got another great book on writing by Stephen King. On Writing, Stephen King, Philosopher's Notes, my favorite 5 big ideas. Let's jump in. Stephen King, at the time of the writing of this 10th anniversary of his book, he had written over 50 books, every single one of which was an international bestseller. Up to this point, he's sold something like 350 million books. I would say he has a thing or two to offer, or 350 million, on the craft of writing. The book is part memoir, part just packed with big ideas on the nuts and bolts and mechanics, and just the overall processes of writing well, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also just a great read in general, no matter what you're doing, what craft you want to master, it's worth reading. And of course, it's incredibly well written, super funny, and just genius. So 5 big ideas. Number 1, spikes. Spikes. What's up with spikes? What do spikes have to do with writing well? Well, imagine young Stephen. He's been a passionate reader and a passionate writer for a while, and he's starting to submit articles to journals and publications, whatever, that he thinks would like his mysteries and other fiction. And what happens? Well, he gets a rejection. He gets a rejection letter. Gets a little nail, hammers it into the wall, and pins that rejection letter on the nail. Keeps on writing. By the way, when he pins that one, the first one on its nail, he actually kind of kicks back and he smiles. He felt pretty good about it. He had a growth mindset. He didn't get that rejection slip and think, oh man, I got rejected. That must mean I'm an idiot. I'm not going to try again. That would be a fixed mindset. He embraced rejection and he actually craved feedback. When a publisher would write a little note on the bottom here, form letter, we are not accepting this. Then they'd write a little handwritten note with just a few words. He'd eat it up. Oh wow, a little insight, and he'd get better. And he'd get better, and he'd get better. But he kept on doing it, and what happened? He kept on getting rejection letters. Got a ton of them. That little nail didn't do the job anymore. So what did he do? He got a big old spike, and he nailed the spike into his wall. And it took that spike to handle the weight of all the rejection letters he got. That is awesome. That is the epitome of the growth mindset. As a recovering perfectionist back in the day, and certainly when I was his age, one rejection, even the idea of getting a rejection, would have stopped me in my tracks, or a fixed mindset person in their tracks, and would have said, oh, I'm not that into it. No big deal. Nah, you need to have a growth mindset, move toward failure, fail more often if you want to succeed. That's the first big idea in writing well, embracing rejection. The second big idea is your man muse. So Stephen talks about the fact that there is a muse. Muses do exist, but they aren't these pretty little women, at least for him. They kind of float into your, or fairies that float into your room and sprinkle magic dust on your keyboard. His muse is a cigar-smoking man muse who lives in his basement and sits there admiring his bowling trophies, he says. Right? And we need to do the work. We need to do the grunt work to make sure the basement is well furnished so our man muse feels great. We got to dust off his bowling trophies and show up day in and day out and do the work if we want the muse to be there for us and occasionally sprinkle the magic dust, which he does have, but he doesn't just show up out of nowhere. We've got to do the work. So think about that. Think about your man muse. And he says, I quote, if you aren't willing to work your ass off, then don't even try to be a great writer. You need to work incredibly hard. Nothing new there. But think about your man muse. Third big idea, the prime directive. So the prime directive for writers, if you want to be a good writer, you need to do two things. You need to read a lot, and you need to write a lot. Not particularly complicated. You got to read a lot, and as you're reading, you're learning your craft. You're seeing great prose, and you're seeing not so great writing. You're learning as you read, and then of course you need to do the work. Showing up, reading a lot, writing a lot, and he makes the important point. Well, first, he reads. How much do you think he reads? How many books a year? 70, I think he said, to 80 or so books a year is what he does. After he shows up and he clocks in his morning writing time, he reads in the afternoons and evenings. And every single moment he can, he always has a book with him. He's in a doctor's office and he's got a few minutes, he reads. Anytime he can, he grabs that space and he reads. And he doesn't read to improve his craft. Reading improves his craft, but he reads because he loves to read. We're going to talk about this in the final big idea. He loves it. Again, we talk about passion all the time. You can't put in the amount of work necessary to achieve elite performance and greatness unless you love what you're doing. Stephen King loves what he does. Absolutely loves writing and reading and stories and telling stories, etc., etc. So that's our prime directive. Whatever you do, what's your prime directive? How do you get more engaged and show up day in and day out? If If you aren't willing to, quote, work your ass off, then just go back to being competent, he says. All right, next big idea, jumper cables. This is another good one. Talks about the fact that after he graduated from college, he spent 2 years teaching. And he actually really enjoyed teaching. He loved his colleagues. He enjoyed the students, even the Beavis and Butthead types he said he found interesting. But at the end of the week, his brain felt as if he had jumper cables attached to it. And it was really hard for him to settle down his brain and write. Now, he did it anyway, and he pushed through those 2 years, and he talks about his wife, Tabitha, and how supportive she was during that process. But it was the one time in his career where he most despaired whether he could make it or not, because he felt like he had jumper cables attached to his brain. Now, you may feel like that. You may be going out and doing this job, and then coming home and trying to do your creative work, and you got jumper cables on your brain. Well, you need to grin and bear it, do what you can to move through that phase, right? But a lot of us have self-imposed jumper cables, where we're actually close to doing what we'd like to do, but then we set our brains up on jumper cables by constantly checking our emails, constantly checking social media, having our cell phones on while we're trying to do something creative. And we're literally our brain all day long. You can't do anything creative without the door shut, as Stephen King says. Shut your door, turn off your phones, and create. We talked about Paul Graham's post on maker versus manager schedules. I'll put a link to that again. You need to create space, blocks of time where you can create. And don't hook your brain up to jumper cables. Not a good idea if you want to write or create or do anything truly great. That's the fourth big idea. The fifth big idea is joy in money. So he says, look, almost every time I'm anywhere, people ask me the question, did you do it for the money? Did you do it for the money? Do you write for the money? And he says unequivocally, I have not written one word with money on my mind. He does it because he loves it. He does it because it gives him an extraordinary amount of joy. Now, he happens to have made a ton, I think his official phrase was a boatload of dough. He's made a lot of money doing it, but that wasn't his intention, primary intention. He loved what he does so much. He loves what he does so much. And the money was a byproduct of him committing to his craft and serving his audience by creating something that they really, really love to read. That was what he committed to. The joy of creating. The byproduct of that and his commitment to the process of mastering his craft and creating something that people would absolutely love and serving them profoundly led to an extraordinary amount of wealth, but it wasn't the other way around. So check out your motivation. Make sure that you start what you're doing here, intrinsic motivation. It gives you a deep sense of love and joy. Take the jumper cables off your brain. And you know if you're doing things that are just firing you up, settle down. Prime directive, read, write a lot, work your butt off. Remember your man muse. He lives in the basement, not fluttering up on some, beautiful little fairy wings and stuff. He's got the wings, but he lives in the basement, admiring his bowling trophies. You've got to build out the basement, keep it furnished, keep it warm, do the work, do the grunt work to make him happy, and then he'll come over and sprinkle some magic dust on. And then the spikes. Embrace our failures. Rejection is inherently part of the process, and we need to embrace it. Fail more if we want to succeed more. That's Growth Mindset 101. There you go. Hope you enjoyed. I love this book. I think you will too. And I hope you have an awesome day. See you.
All right. We're going to move on from that and talk about it real quick. So several things that he pointed out here, 5 specific things that he pointed out here. The first one is spikes. We're talking about growth mindset here, and Stephen King is like epitome of the growth mindset. He was receiving so many rejection slips. This guy started submitting writings when he was in middle school, like submitting to the local newspaper, submitting to a school newspaper, and he would get rejection slips, and he collected them, he kept them, and he learned from them, especially the ones where the editor or whoever was sending the rejection back would write on it and leave him a note. Oh, he craved those, and he took them and he learned from them. Because oftentimes in rejection, we can ask why. We can get information, and we're going to talk about that much later in the semester when it comes to talking about interviews. But right off the bat, we have to understand that critique is essential to growth. We have to learn to embrace critique. We have to learn to embrace rejection. We have to learn to embrace failure, because without those things, we don't grow. Do not grow as people because we don't learn what it is that we need to improve. I think sometimes we sit around thinking, I'm fine, when you may very well be fine. However, there's always room for growth. Always. No one reaches the utmost perfection, not here on this place. But we continue to strive for it because we want to be successful. So Stephen King says, collect rejections. Get a spike, put it on your wall, and collect those things. Without failure, we don't grow. That's awesome. So number 2 is man muse, and you guys may be like, I didn't understand what he was talking about, right? I get it. But this is more about our inspiration. What inspires you? What motivates you? What are you willing to do in order to reach those places where you long to be? What are you striving for? Is there a person that is always in your head that you're constantly working for? Like you're constantly wanting their approval and wanting them to be proud of you. Do you have those people in your mind? Do you have those long-term goals in your mind? Those muses, the things that you're working for, that you need to do the work, you need to lay out the groundwork so that you can achieve and you can reach to where your inspiration takes you. That's your muse. I'm going to show you mine here in just a moment. Your prime directive, he says, whatever it is that you're doing, do it. Right? So if it's writing that you're interested, you've got to read a lot. You have to write a lot, but you've got to read a lot because it's from reading that you learn how to write better. Reading a multitude of authors helps you write better. And I love when students want to tell me, I don't like to read. I don't like to write, right? Don't let those things come out of your mouth, because my response to you is, do you have one of these? Because if you have one of these, you read. And if you have one of these, you write. That's how we communicate nowadays. Like literally, if you're on your phone, you're reading and writing all day long. We just have to be a little bit more choosy, perhaps, about what we read. Maybe a little more intentional sometimes with the content and quality of things that we're reading. But if you want to be a better writer, make sure you're reading well-written things. Don't spend all your time reading memes because they're full of bad grammar. But whatever it is that you're going to do, it's not just writing, but perhaps you love to work on cars, or you are really good with math and you're going to be an accountant, or you love law. Whatever it is that you want to do, you're going to be a nurse. Do that thing that you love. Set aside time and always be focused on it. Be pushing towards that and take off your jumper cables. Put this thing down so that you can focus and you can be creative and you can allow yourself the freedom of expression. These are a tool. They are not to run our lives. They're a tool. And so Stephen King's calling them jumper cables. You have to take them off, put them down so that we can focus on the task at hand. And then joy. What is it that you want to do with your life? Do what makes you joyful. Focus on what makes you joyful and do that thing. That's exciting. Stephen King's like, living the dream here, right? Because he loves to write and he gets paid to do it. I'm also living the dream because I love to teach and I get paid to do it. It's amazing. You're going to work hard while you're in school, get yourself to a place where you can do what you love for a living, and then you get paychecks. And it's like, oh my gosh, really? It's super cool. So those are some big ideas that Brian Johnson took out of the On Writing book, which is super interesting to me because for me, what I took out of the On Writing book is more about the writer's toolbox and the things that are vitally necessary for us to pay attention to and the things that we need to learn to ignore. And so for me, the most important section of the book was apparently a completely different section than what stood out to Brian. Isn't that fascinating? With any text or with any song, with any movie, we all take something different away from it. So for me, I drew information that he talks about when it comes to do's and don'ts for writers. And I've poured those into one or two of our PowerPoints for this class. So I'll be referring to that book off and on. So I wanted to show you my muse. This is Graziella, and I only know that's her name because I stumbled across a picture of her online years ago, probably 14 years ago, 15 years ago. And I just fell in love with this lady because look at her. She's a beast. She's so beautiful to me. Like, she doesn't care what you think. She doesn't care two hoots what you think because she has confidence. Oh, look at her. Yeah. So I came across a picture of this lady. I'm going to show you the one I found first here in just a moment. And I was like mind blown by her and by how beautiful she is and how just bright and gaudy and amazing she is. And so I was like, I'm going to be just like her when I grow up. And so I printed the picture out. I put it into some contact paper so it was laminated, and I hung it in my kitchen. Well, eventually it moved to my office, and the picture of her has been in my office. It's right here, actually, has been in my office every day since. And I think we're going on 15 years now together, Graziella and I. So this is the original picture that I found. Isn't she beautiful? She's so beautiful. Look at that big old cigar and those ratty tennis shoes and the bright colors that don't go together. Oh my gosh, the big giant bow in her hair. Love her. The giant earrings. I'm all about it. Oh, did I not get that in the right spot? Let's go over just a little bit. There we go. Make her more visible for you. So anytime I make a video this semester, you're going to see and you're going to remember that's Mrs. C's muse. That's right. So let's talk about Graziella. I was like, oh my gosh, who is this woman? She's amazing. So I did a little internet research and I discovered her name was Graziella. And at the time, talking 15 years ago, she was reportedly around 86 years old. So that would make her 101 today. So I'm not sure if Graziella is still with us. But she lived in Havana, Cuba, and she would charge tourists $1 to take her picture. Love her. Love her. I love her so much that this original picture that I found of her inspired my first novel. I'm seeing her every day, thinking about what would it be like to know this woman? What kinds of things would we talk about? Just how do I learn to be like her? How did she develop this sense of confidence to charge tourists $1 to take her picture? That's hysterical. I love it. But she became the basis for my novel, A Kiss in the Rain. And it is about a young woman who's about 27 years old who is a grocery store checker. And this older lady whose name became Adeline, not Graziella, Adeline would come through her line every Tuesday. And the two of them develop a friendship that eventually is going to become very important in both of their lives. There's some intrigue and there's some drama that unfolds, and both of them experience a little romance in their own age groups. So it's pretty exciting. I love it. I love the story. I'm very proud of it. But she's my inspiration. She's who I want to be proud of me. She's who I feel like I'm writing my stories for because I want to say, hey, Graziella, read this, right? Like, what do you think? Do you approve? Like, is this awesome? I want to know what she thinks. So, news. Isn't that wonderful? I love that. So, we're going to talk about writing today. We're going to talk about the writing process. Then I'm going to walk you through the writing an argument outline worksheet, which I'm very proud of. And it is something that I came up with and have been editing and reformatting over the years that I've been teaching, because I discovered many years ago that students really don't understand how to outline. And at that time, I was teaching English in a trade school when I first came and hit this brick wall where my students, many of them did not even finish high school and gotten GEDs, and now were coming to trade school, had no clue one about anything necessary in an English class to do a decent job on an essay. And so our textbook was written for like Ivy League students at, like Princeton or whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no. And so I searched the internet looking for resources, and I just couldn't find anything that had like my stamp on it, like that said, yes, I want to use this for my students. And so I ended up having to make my own, right? I had to make my own resource. And what's awesome about that is over the years, I've been able to manipulate it and change it and alter it. And so what I'm going to be sharing with you now is the result of 13, 14 years of my own experience teaching. And so I'm excited about that. We're going to get to that here in a few slides. Right off the bat, we're going to just talk a little bit about writing and academic writing and what that means. And then we're going to work our way into the writing process and then to that worksheet that I have come up with for you. So writing, it's almost like learning a new language. So many of you I know are sitting out there going, I hate writing. I don't like to write. I can't write. Let me just snicker at you. Yes, you can. Again, I remind you, you're writing on here all day. And you know how to convince people to meet you at the Quick Trip if you need them to buy you a soda or give you gas money. You know how to communicate to get what you need. So we're not even going to go to that I can't spot, because you can. See, so much of our confidence has been destroyed in the past by people who may be living in a different kind of bubble, made you feel like you couldn't. I completely disagree. You already have the skills because you're using them in real life. So let's talk about how do we take those skills that we already have and we tweak them for academia. We tweak them and make them more applicable to being successful in essays across the board as you journey forward into your educational career. So excited about that. So it is like learning a new language in the sense that you're going to take what you already know and we're going to add some things to it. We're going to tweak it a little bit so that when you leave my class, you can go confidently into other classes and know that you have the tools that you need to proceed forward. So I'm excited about it. So the slides to come are full of information drawn not only from the textbook, Everyone's an Author, which we're not using. We're not going to have you buy the textbook because it's all up here. It's in my head and it's my job to share it with you. I've also sprinkled a lot of the information from that textbook into our PowerPoint presentations. And so throughout the semester, you might come across a week where there isn't a PowerPoint or a video lecture. Read the PowerPoint because it's all in there. Everything that you need for that week, it's in PowerPoint. So read it, open it up, put it in slideshow mode, work your way through it. Enjoy it because you never know what I put in there. But most all of this information that I'm going to be sharing with you comes from my own personal experience. And I will remind you, I don't think I told you this part, but I do have that master's degree in writing and I do have 2 bachelor's degrees. So over the course of those 3 degrees, I have somewhere in the neighborhood of 95 credits in English classes. Oh, yeah. So I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. So we're going to jump forward here with some information that's important. So meeting the demands of academic writing. Well, first of all, you need to define what academic writing is, right? So an easy definition is writing that you do for school. Could we just leave it at that? Well, maybe, but no, let's take it a little deeper. It's more than that. It's writing that follows a strict set of conventions, such as using standard edited English. It follows a logical pattern of organization, and it provides support for the points that you make. So academic writing, it uses standard English, which means you're going to make sure it's grammatically correct and it's following the format that's necessitated for the situation. It has a logical pattern of organization, which means you've used an outline, and it provides support for the points that you make. So you're going to have points on that outline, and you're going to back up those points with evidence. That's what makes it academic writing. So taking it a step further, it is also journals, newspapers, books, and most articles on the web, blogs, etc. Academic writing is so much more than just writing essays. And I think it gets a bad rap because we have the elusive, hard to tackle research paper looming in the back of our minds. And we think that's what academic writing is. But it's actually so much more broad than just the research paper. So it's a vast spectrum of writing. It's writing where we want to inform. We want to inform our audience, and we're using standard edited English. We're following a logical pattern of organization, and we're providing support for the points that we make. So that doesn't sound so bad, right? So the point of the Everyone's an Author textbook on page 41, they say, is this. They want to try to demystify some of the assumptions and conventions of academic writing and get you started thinking about how to use them to your advantage. Oh my gosh, I love that sentence. These authors come out and say, we want to demystify your biases about academic writing. We want to help you move past those. And we want you to get started thinking about how you can use these basic principles of academic writing to your advantage in life. Hey, oh, I'm all about that. Relating what we do here to life and our soft skills, all about it. So let's keep going forward. Did you catch it? How to use them to your advantage. What? How? Why do I need to? Why do you need this information? So that you can be successful. I'm so excited. To my advantage. How? You need to be able to respond with active processes. It's fine to express strong opinions, but it's also important to remember and acknowledge that there is almost surely some value in perspectives other than your own. This is a key function of academic writing, is to express your opinions and back them up, but also recognize, admit, and portray that there are other perspectives. When we do that, we are participating in academic writing / academic argument / argument in general, which is fantastic. We want to always acknowledge that there is value in perspectives other than our own. You're not the only one who can be right. There are many ways to view an issue. We're just going to argue that and talk about that and write about that with support. See, that's kind of exciting because you're participating in argumentative conversations with your friends, with coworkers, with your family, across the board. These things that we're going to discuss in this class will help you do that better. Woo-hoo. How exciting. You need to be willing to ask questions. Take responsibility for your own learning. I love that the textbook said that. When I first read it, I went, yeah. feel like we live in a world that doesn't like to take responsibility for itself. But if we want to be successful, we must take responsibility for our own learning. You're responsible for you. I'm responsible for me. Now, I'm your teacher. Therefore, I am responsible to make sure you are given the information. What you do with it, that's your responsibility. But become a question asker. Ask questions. Don't be afraid of questions. Don't feel like your questions are stupid. Be willing to ask questions. Get information if you feel that you need a little more information. Ask, advocate for yourself. Value yourself enough to advocate for yourself. Get what you need. It's good stuff. See, good stuff. Say what you think, but provide adequate support for your ideas. There are a lot of times in life when I keep my trap shut when certain conversations come up because I don't really feel like I have all my ducks in a row. So at that point, rather than just argue aimlessly, I'm going to listen. Then I'm going to do some research and maybe revisit that conversation at another time. I like my ducks in a row. My husband told me recently, he says, you really don't ever participate in conflict unless you have your ducks in a row, do you? And I was like, nope, I don't. Wait, and I watch, and I listen. And then I look for my support. If I have all of my support lined out, I'm going to dive in. So when it comes to talking about all of this writing everything, I know the material. So I dive into these conversations and I enjoy them and I love it. But that doesn't mean I'm always thorough enough for you to understand it. So you need to ask questions. If I'm glossing over something because I feel like it makes sense and I'm just assuming that it would make sense to you and it doesn't make sense to you, tell me. Ask me questions. Take responsibility for your learning. Say what you think, but be able to provide support for it. And be focused from the start. The point is not to show how much you know, but instead to provide as much information as your audience needs to understand the point, right? So it's not about us when we are participating in argument or in academic writing. It's not about you. It's about, does your audience understand your message? It's about the audience. Was the message clear? Did they get what you said? That's what the focus needs to be. How do I get this message across to that audience? That's good stuff. So that's something we have to rethink and train our brains for, because that doesn't just apply to academic writing. That applies to life. Any job that you're in, it's the same thing. It's about the customer. It's about the student. It's about the management in some cases. And so we need to make sure that we ask questions, take responsibility for ourselves, say what we think, but with appropriate evidence, and then keep the audience in mind, always putting the audience first in your thoughts, so that all of the support that you gather, all of this information that you put together is audience focused, is something that you know your audience is going to listen to. Good stuff. State your point explicitly, because the burden for success is on you. You have to be as clear as you can. And when someone comes to you and says they didn't understand, don't be offended and don't get angry, but understand it's about the audience. And so if the audience didn't get your message, then you need to reword it. You need to restate it in some other way so that they can understand what you're saying. So some characteristic features of academic writing: we use standard edited English. We use clear and recognizable patterns of organization. We mark logical relationships between ideas, meaning we want to have good transition statements in our writing and in our speech. State claims explicitly and provide appropriate support. So we're reiterating what I've already said. Present your ideas as a response to others. That's going to require you to use opposing perspectives in your argument. If you're going to present your ideas as a response to other perspectives, you have to include other perspectives in your writing, which makes your writing stronger. When you're willing to admit that other perspectives exist and that yours is not the only one out there that is held by people, you establish credibility with your audience, but be able to back up your opinion and why you believe what you believe. It's good stuff. Express your ideas clearly and directly. Be aware of how genres and conventions vary across disciplines. So what is the vessel for your message? Is it a speech? Is it an essay? Is it a research paper? Is it a blog post? Are you writing a short story? Are you writing an email? What is the vessel, the genre, if you will, of your message? Understand how it works. And then always document your sources using appropriate citation style. And while you're in college, you're going to have different professors and different types of classes who are going to require different citation styles. For our class, we're using MLA. For science classes, you're going to be using APA. For history classes, sometimes you're going to run into Chicago style. So you need to be able to code switch between the different styles. And it really is a matter of how much effort you put into doing some internet research, some Googling of MLA and some Googling of APA, or how much time you're willing to go and sit down and spend in the writing center so that the folks who work in there can help you solidify your ability to use appropriate citation style. It's very important. It's that attention to detail stuff that can make or break an argument. So you want to be doing that for yourself. Now, let's talk about managing the writing process. And if we were in a classroom together, I would tell you, you get brownie points for knowing what movie this is. But I may bump into any of you at the grocery store and never know what you look like because this is an online class. So we're going to skip that part. This is from the Goonies. I love the Goonies. It's in my top favorite movies, and it is fake homework. I will frequently give you fake homework. Watching the Goonies is fake homework. It's just good for you. You should watch it. It's good fun. So moving on. The first thing you need to do in the writing process is understand the assignment. Don't leave a class when an assignment is given unless you understand exactly what it is the professor wants you to do. Ask questions, advocate for yourself, make sure you know what it is that you are to be doing. The next thing is schedule your time. You want to be conscious of how much time you have to get this project done and give yourself time to work yourself through this process. I know many of you are last minuters, procrastinate, you wait till the very end, and then you turn in procrastinated projects. Professors can tell. We can tell. And it's disheartening, to say the least. I would say that, but that's just how I feel about it. But I'm not sure if that matters or not. But it is disheartening when you see that students are waiting to the last minute, especially when I know from experience and from reading that scheduling your time makes all the difference, and you turn out quality projects. Now, those of you that are interested in doing quality work, this is a key component so that you can come to that place. So you know when your assignment is due, you know what the writing process steps are, you know how much time you need to allot to all of the different portions of the writing process, which we're going to talk about now. But so you want to make sure you're scheduling your time. Then the next step, before you start doing any writing or anything at all, you want to get into your zone. What does she mean by that? Well, no single process works for every single person who's doing a project or doing some writing, right? We all are different. And so you need to figure out what works for you so that you can train your brain when it's time to work, right? So do you need music? I like to play, you look on YouTube for classical music for studying. and different playlists come up, and I'll choose one of those and I'll listen to that. Now, if I'm doing some fiction writing, I might choose some 80s hair band rock. I might choose some romance tunes. Just kind of depends on the mood I'm needing to be in for that particular fiction writing. But for most of my nonfiction writing, I've got some good classical going in the background just because it's soothing to me and it keeps me from getting as distracted by outside noises and other thoughts in my brain. So that's something I need. But maybe you need it quiet. Maybe you need a cup of coffee. I've got my water. Always got my cup. I've got a straw everywhere I go. And so I have that ready and available to myself so that I'm not distracted by that. I don't have to get up and walk away from whatever it is I'm working on. Do you work best in the morning or the evening? Do you need it dark? Do you need it light? Do you need solitude? Do you work best in a crowd? Can you go sit down at a busy Starbucks in the morning and completely zone all the people out? And there's something about the dull, just noise, the hush of the crowd, like that, just that white noise that comes from the crowd that works for you, that you're able to function better in that environment. If so, make that a habit. Make that something that you do when it's time to work. Do you need snacks? I'll show you what I have. Lifesavers. Wintergreen Lifesavers got a drawer full. And every now and then I need one, and so I'll pop it into my mouth, but it keeps me from going to the kitchen and looking for things to eat. You know, I have issues like that. So, and I know this about myself. So figure out where and figure out what works for you. And if you do this every time you sit down to do some work, some schoolwork, some academic writing, some studying, you're conditioning your brain for your writing needs. And that's something that you need to be doing for yourself. Stephen King does this, and he talks about it in On Writing, the textbook. And so that's something, oh, let's go back to that. I didn't mean to move this ahead. I'm trying to move my picture a little higher. So Stephen King does it, just saying. He writes in the mornings. He has a glass of tea. He has no distractions. He closes his door when he's writing to his office. He has a very clean desk, and he writes at the same time every day. I'm not sure that the desk that I'm looking at would be considered clean. As a matter of fact, here you can see there's papers and there's stuff. Yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily consider this clean. But I do my best writing in the evening. I like it when it's dark. I'm sitting in a dark room right now with a lamp on. I don't like distractions, which is why I will choose music to kind of drown out the distractions because I'm a people watcher. And if there are people around to watch, I'm going to watch them. So like going to Starbucks for me, no, I cannot zone you out. I find people far too interesting, and maybe that's because I'm a fiction writer, but I'm going to write you into my book if I watch you and you're interesting. So figure out what works for you. That's getting into your zone so that you can be effective at your writing time. Now, so you know the assignment and you've scheduled your time and you are in your writing zone. Now it's time to start. So the following worksheet is on Blackboard under handouts. It's also in our week 3 folder. So the writing and argument essay outline and process worksheet. I am going to walk you through this right now. And then your homework is going to be to complete one of these worksheets and turn it in. So you want to pay attention right now, right? Your ears should have perked up at homework, at the homework word. So the very first thing on the worksheet that you do is fill in, determine your controversial topic. So what is it that you're writing about? What's the topic of your essay? Write it. What is the context of the assignment, essay, message, or speech? Well, for my class, it's going to be Comp 1 essay. Comp 1 essay 1, Comp 1 essay 2, Comp 1 essay 3, Comp 1 essay 4. 4 essays. We're not going to actually use the outline for the first one. We'll use it for the second one. So, what is the context of the assignment? Write that down. Then you ask yourself, who is my audience? Well, oftentimes for your classes, your audience is your professor. And for this class, that would be me. So you would put Professor Cunningham. But sometimes you're going to be in a class when a professor says to you, write this essay geared toward this age group, or write this essay geared toward a group of prisoners, or write this essay geared toward, and you have a specific uh, audience that you're writing towards, because the words that we choose and how we say things changes depending on who we're speaking to, or at least it should. Your message should change and alter in the sense that we choose different words, different language, a different vibe, depending on who it is that we're talking to. And so you want to write down, who is my audience? Be very clear. Then the next thing is, what is the context of my audience? And you're like, I don't know what that means. I do, so let me tell you. What is the context of my audience? So for the purposes of our class, the context of your audience is Professor Cunningham is the teacher of my class. She will be grading this essay. That's the context of the situation. So with an audience, you always want to know, what's the context? So out there in the real world, let's say that you're writing a memo at your job and it's going to which department? What time of day? How do you need to word it to get it read? What's the context? What's going on here? How many people are going to read it? What are the chances it can get forwarded on? What are all these little things about your audience that you need to know? How old is your audience? Right? Are they young? Are they old? What are their demographics? Everything that you need to know about your audience in order to be effective at reaching them, you write that down here. Now, what is your goal? Why are you bringing this message to the audience? So for the purposes of this class, you're going to be like, my goal is to get a good grade on this essay that I have to write for this class. Perfectly fine answer for that. But let's say that you're out in the real world. Why are you sharing that message? Why are you taking that message to that audience? You know who your audience is, and you know what the context of your audience is. You know the demographics of your audience. Why are you bringing them this message? Write that down. What's your goal? What's your purpose? What's your intent? Write that down. Maybe it's to bring awareness about human trafficking, right? Generate ideas is our next step. This is where we're going to do some brainstorming, some free writing, or whatever works for you. We don't all need the same process. Me, I like to do free writing. I like to just know my topic, sit down, write everything about it that I possibly can. But maybe you like to do like the bubbles where you just write information all over the paper and then you draw circles and lines to attach them to each other. I believe that would be the clustering. But that just seems like a nightmare to me. I'm very much a free writing kind of gal. So I've written free writing into the worksheet, the outline worksheet, and we're going to take a look at that. This step is called word vomit. This is my free writing section. And so this is time to word vomit. And you guys, you're welcome for the baby, but I needed you to have this like mental picture. But imagine those are words coming out of that baby, and that baby is you, and you are just spewing forth words. Is the baby thinking about the words? No, the baby's not thinking about what's coming out of it, nor should you think about the words that are coming out of you when you are free writing. Isn't that wonderful? It's beautiful. So write no less than 15 things that you already know about your topic, including opposing ideas. Just write them down. Just everything you already know without doing research. Don't be looking up stuff, not just yet, unless you absolutely have to because you know nothing about your topic, but don't go down any rabbit holes. This is where we're writing down everything we already know about our topic, everything we already know for and against it. Just fill the page, right? You want to be like that baby. You want to just be like, get it all out. Maybe you need more than 15 lines, but you're going to, on the worksheet, fill out all 15. I'll go ahead and change the page now. See, that doesn't gross me out because I've had 6 babies, so it doesn't. It makes me go, oh, baby. Oh, oh, your sad little belly. Okay, I'll change it. So the next step is to figure out what your opinion on the topic is. So determine from the word vomit what truly is your opinion on that topic. It may not be what you originally thought it was. You might discover something completely different about yourself after you free write. And that's one of those fun things. If you're doing it without thought, you're doing it without thinking much, then you're opening up your mind and you're allowing things to come out without you getting in the way. And so when we dive back in and we take a look at that word vomit, free writing, might discover something different than what we thought our opinion would be. It's possible. So you're going to figure out what your opinion is on that topic and write it down. So we're going to put it, fill it in. So then I was like, here is where we camp. And then I put my favorite joke. This is my favorite joke. I don't care if you think it's funny. It makes me laugh. You can't run to a campground. You can only ran because it's past tense. I laugh every time. No apology. Oh, funny. All right. So we have our opinion. We know what our opinion is. We wrote it down. Next step is to use your 15 things you know about the topic or word vomit to determine your 3 main points. You know what your topic is. You know what your opinion is. Now look back through that information in your word vomit. What are 3 points that you could use to back up your opinion? And you always want to keep the strongest point last. So your strongest point will always be number 3. Let your argument build from weakest to strongest, though maintaining that all points must be influential to your audience. Audience-based points. So look for that information in your word vomit that's going to back up your opinion, but also be influential to your reader. So spend a little time here and be thinking about that. What is some information there inside of your word vomit? You haven't done any research yet. Some information inside there that backs up your opinion. Write them down, put them in order, weakest to strongest. Now, this next step is going to blow your mind. No, we're not there yet. The next step is the dreaded, elusive, fright-inducing, self-esteem busting thesis statement. I remember what it was like to be in high school English classes and to have to write a thesis statement. And I was terrified because I never felt like I did it right. And I never felt like I understood how to write the thesis statement. Like I always just would turn something in and then go like this. Like you're hiding, waiting for the bomb to go off. You're just like, oh, please, please, please. And then you get your paper back and you're like, okay, I guess she liked it. Or, oh, that sucked. But you didn't understand why it sucked. So I've come up with a formula for a thesis statement that I think is going to be very helpful for my students. And it has been helpful for years now, 13, 14 years I've been doing this in class. So this is what we're going to do so that we can address this dreaded, elusive, fright-inducing, self-esteem busting thesis statement. Stupid thesis statement. We have to have it. So I'm just going to tell you this. You can do it. And here's how. Here's your equation for a thesis statement. First of all, breathe. Then opinion, which you already wrote down, plus the word because, which you can write because. Your 3 main points. Opinion plus because plus 3 main points equals your thesis statement. That That's what your thesis needs to contain. It needs to be opinionated, and it needs to be a roadmap to your readers about what's coming in your essay. So you include your opinion, because that tells them what the essay's about, and your 3 main points, because that gives them the roadmap so that they know what's coming. That's not so hard. You already wrote those things down. Who said writing a thesis was hard? I did in high school. So you create your thesis from your opinion. This is what it looks like on the worksheet. From your opinion, your 3 main points. This is one sentence. We are not going to be writing long papers, and so your thesis statement will be one sentence. And when I'm grading and I come across thesis statements that are 2 or 3 sentences, I will take off points. You need to combine it into one sentence. It must be debatable and tell what your essay presentation will be about. It has to pass the so what test. If somebody reads your thesis statement and goes, so, then it's not passing the so what test. It needs to be opinionated. If it's truly opinionated, there's going to be somebody that reads it and goes, no, I don't think so. And so we want to use words like regretfully and disgusting and worst ever. You know, we want to use like strong language in our thesis statement so that somebody somewhere is going to be like offended by it. And they're going to want to argue it. That's what makes a thesis statement good, is that it's debatable. Somebody's going to be like, don't think so. And you're going to be like, okay, then let's argue. Let's discuss. And here are my main points. So that's how you create your thesis statement. Opinion plus because plus 3 main points equals your thesis statement. Now, this doesn't have to be your final thesis statement, but this is what we begin with. You start with this. You don't have to stress about this. You've already done the work. Just put it together with word because and let's move on. Now here's proof, backing myself up on this one sentence thing. This is from the Southern New Hampshire University website. Thesis statements are often how many sentences? 1. However, in some cases, for a very in-depth paper, very detailed paper, meaning it's pages and pages and pages long, it may be appropriate to include a longer thesis statement. You should ask your professor for their advice. Always find out from your professor what their expectations on thesis statements are. Always. Because all of us are different. Professors are different. We have different expectations. So advocate for yourself. Ask questions. Find out what their expectations for thesis statements are. But know that the general rule is for an essay of 5 to 6 pages, 1 sentence. 1 sentence. Now, if you're going to be diving into a 10 to 20 page paper, you can probably do a 2 to 3 sentence thesis statement. We're not at that point. So, no, 1 sentence. And I'm going to be a stickler on that. Okay? That's why I have 3 slides dedicated to it. I am a stickler on this. It is 1, just 1, no more, just 1. 1 is not a lonely number for a thesis statement. 1 will do. If your thesis is more than 1 sentence, I will deduct points. No questions, no excuses, 1 sentence. So now we move on to the outline. Dun, dun, dun. We've already done all the pre-work. So you've already done all the hard stuff for the most part. So now we jump to the actual outline itself. We want to begin. We want an introduction. And maybe we want to skip the introduction part until you get the rest of the outline filled out. But you already have your thesis statement, so go ahead and write it there in the thesis statement part. All right? Now, if you've already thought of a catchy story or a funny joke or something that's going to make the audience go, ooh, you know, something that's going to, like some statistical data, something that's going to lead them to your thesis, go ahead and put your introduction down. But if you still need some time to think on that, that's fine. Leave that blank for the time being. But before you finish your outline, you want to come back and fill in your introduction or your hook. But go ahead, put your thesis down because you know what it is. Then we move on. This is our main point one, and you already know what your main point one is, so write it down. Write it down right up there at the top. You're going to put it in the blanks. And so then, okay, see, I put topic and transition sentence, and some of you might be like, oh no, I hated this in high school. Right, I know. Me too. But let's just kind of let that place sit there for a second, okay? We're going to let that sit there for a second. We're going to move on to evidence. So we might want to use our word vomit still. Go back in, look at it some more. Do any of the 15 things or however many you wrote, does any of that information back up this main point, or does it have to do with this main point? You can use that information still if it aligns with this main point. So you can fill in those subpoints. And then I included a new section here. This is the counter argument. And I wanted to get it to sit back a little bit so that it aligned right there under transition, but I couldn't get it to do it. I was getting frustrated, so I was fine. But it looks right on your actual worksheet that you're going to be using for this week's homework. So you're going to always have a counter argument. Always talk about the opposing perspective or an opposing perspective. So you want to list out what it is to your main point, and then add some evidence for that perspective as well. And in your paragraph here, you're going to deal with that. Now, how you want to really put this information together and how you want to address it when you really start writing your essay, that's going to be up to you. But at least have all of that written down right here where you have access to it. And then you're going to write a concluding statement for your main point. And so generally, this needs to be a transition sentence that's going to lead into the second main point. Okay. So you can come back up here to your transition and topic sentence and be thinking of a topic sentence like it's a thesis. So you know what your main point is, right? You can use that same equation. We know what our main point is. We know what our evidence points are. Make yourself a topic sentence / thesis for that paragraph or this section of your paper. Then we move on to main point 2. Same thing with main point 2. And then main point 3, we do the same thing to main point 3. Then we come to our conclusion. Never, ever, ever skip your conclusion. Don't rush through your conclusion. I have students do this on a regular basis, and it's like, paper will be so good, and then we get to this part and it's just rushed. Don't rush the conclusion. Your conclusion needs to be like a gun going off. Like it needs to be just like this boom kind of moment for your reader where they're like, okay, I get it. So we start with our restated thesis. And what I usually do, what I usually tell students is just flip your thesis. 3 main points leads to opinion. This is why I've talked about all of these things, right? And then we want to have a drop the mic conclusion. We want to have a call to action at the end. Like, you care about this topic now because you've been spending some time with it. You want other people to care about it too. So what are you going to say to them at the end here? What are you going to say to get them to care about the topic with you? And that's your outline. Dun, dun, dun. Now, with the actual worksheet that I've given you, there's also 2 or 3 pages of filling out the outline explanation. I didn't actually write that part. I added some things to it, but it is on the actual worksheet for you. So I know I just kind of ran through all of that quickly. So you've got that as a guide when you pull the actual worksheet up. It's in the pages of the worksheet. So it's there to walk you through filling this out for your first time on your. So it's there. Don't panic. But look what you've done. You made an outline. Go you. And now what's super cool about that is at this point, you are ready to do your research. You do your research after you've gotten yourself organized, because now you know exactly what it is you need to look up. You know what your opinion is, you know what your main points are. So look up information that backs up your main points. Look up information that opposes your main points. Add that stuff to your outline. We're also going to go over this later in the semester. I'm going to talk to you about using note cards to help you do your research. We're going to dig in a little bit deeper, but the handout for that is on Blackboard. I've given it to you under handouts. That's called Note Cards, Mrs. C's Way. Something that was taught to me when I was in the latter part of high school, and it revolutionized paper writing for me. And it is a tool that I still use to this day. And I love teaching it because it's helpful. And I want to give you the tools that you need so that you can be successful as you go through your college adventure. So you've made your outline, and that's so exciting. And then you're ready to do some research. So these tools are on Blackboard. You've got the writing process poster and the writing and argument essay outline worksheet, but there's also that note cards Mrs. C's Way on there too. But like I said, we're going to talk about that later in the semester. So if we were in the classroom together, this next part would be a viable section, but I'm just going to talk about it with you here real quick. What I like to do in the classroom is practice filling out that outline with my students. We're not going to have that same time here. But what I do bring up in the classroom is the topic of trafficking. And it is something that people often are not aware of. They don't know and understand that it is. The last statistical data I looked at said that it is the second largest criminal industry in the world. Billions of dollars. I think UNICEF is reporting $32 billion a year it generates in revenue, if we can call it revenue. That's disgusting. But I've actually seen in other places more recently that it's much higher, much higher. And I actually was talking with someone this week as a result of the movie actually coming out on July 4th. Here, I've had the trailer in here for 2 or 3 years. The movie was made 5 years ago and has been kept from being released because there are many power players in this large criminal industry that is global that don't want you to be aware that trafficking is a thing. And so the movie was made 5 years ago, and it has faced opposition and opposition and opposition, even getting to theaters. And so finally it has. And now you've got theaters who are like, oh, the camera broke. Okay. All right. So the question I pose here is, who's paying and who's buying and who's supplying? If this is the second largest criminal industry in the world, it is about to eclipse the drug trade. Yet it's kept. Somebody's buying, somebody's supplying. And it's people you pass in the grocery store. It's people you stand next to in line at Lowe's. This is global. And so what I do in the classroom is we look at statistical data, talk about trafficking, whether it's labor trafficking or it's sex trafficking. Both are grisly. Do you know the average life expectancy of a child or a person who is sex trafficked is 7 years? That's the life expectancy once you've been trafficked is 7 years. I read somewhere that a sex trafficking victim can be raped is 600 times, 6,000 times a year. I remember there was some data I found online, I believe it was through UNICEF, just disgusted me, absolutely disgusted me. But you need to look for yourself. And so in the classroom, we look at all this information, and then we fill out an outline over our opinion and our main points in the classroom. And it's easy to do because this is a topic we can all care about. And see, that's a key takeaway here. I would love to keep talking about trafficking, but that takes us off subject, even though it's probably one of the most important things that we could be talking about. Aside from that, the fact that fentanyl is like the #1 killer of young people. Stay on target here. But the key to being able to argue successfully, to fill out an outline successfully, to write an essay successfully, is to care about your topic. When you care about your topic, you have more access to words. You just do. You open up your mind and you access more information when you care. And then you say, okay, well, Miss C, sometimes the professors give us work we don't care about. Well, remember we talked about the responsibility is yours. So it's on you to find a way to care about it. You may have been given an assignment in which you compare different types of carpet fiber. Find a way to care about those different types of carpet fiber. Which one tends to cause more allergic reaction? Which one has caused a tragic child death? Something. Look up information about your topic that you can care about and use that information in your argument. It's on you. It's your responsibility. You have to find a way to care about it. And when you care about it, you access more words. All right, so your homework is going to be to find a relevant news story, something in the world right now that's happening that you care strongly about, something that just is one of those things that's driving you, that you maybe you don't watch much news or sit back and do much digging on the internet, but find something. Talk to your parents if you need to, see what it is that they are paying attention to right now. But there's lots going on in this world. Lots going on in this world that you should be aware of. So I want you to pick something, anything, and complete the writing and argument essay outline worksheet. Be opinionated and organize yourself. All right, so that takes us to the end of the PowerPoint. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share. Let's go to our Blackboard course shell. I'm going to take a look at the Blackboard course shell. Now we are not in the student view, we are in my view, but it's similar. So here is the PowerPoint, and right above it, when you see this, it's going to have this video that I'm making right now. It's going to be seated right there above the PowerPoint. Here are the handouts that are relational to what I've discussed today. We've got, well, here's also some trafficking information I threw in here too. But there's the note cards, Mrs. C's Way, the writing and outline worksheet, and the writing process poster. You know what? Let's put the correct handout there, because that is not the correct handout. I'm going to mark that one for removal, and I'm going to find the correct worksheet so that you're turning in the correct work. That's a good idea, huh? I'm going to give you not only the PDF, but also the Word document so that you can choose which one you want to use. It's going to take just a second here, so while that's loading up, keep talking. So you can choose to open the Word document and fill it out on your computer, or you can choose to upload the PDF and print it out. You could handwrite on it, and then you could handwrite on it and then scan it and upload it here on Blackboard as well. So now I have given you the updated, yes. And here is a past example. This one is a worksheet that was filled out by a former class regarding trafficking. That's just as an example for you. But the actual worksheet that I want you to use is right here. All right, so you've got the Word document and you've got the PDF. And then down here, again, here's where the actual assignment is. And look, I did put the correct ones there. So that's awesome. So this is where you're going to complete your assignment. Select a news story. It can be about anything. Read it thoroughly. Then make your way through the writing and outline worksheet or the writing and argument essay outline and process worksheet. Be opinionated, organize yourself. We will not write an essay from this. We are only practicing the worksheet. We're practicing outlining. I will be looking to see that the entire worksheet is filled out. No blank spots. And you're like, dang, that's a lot of writing. It's okay, really. I promise. It's going to be good for you. So I will be reading your thesis statements to see if you followed the thesis statement formula. 1 sentence for a thesis. 1. Complete the entire outline. You may use the Word file and type on it directly on your computer, or you may print the PDF and handwrite on it, scan it, and upload that to Blackboard. Either way works for me. And so you'll turn that in right here in the outline worksheet spot. Okay, create submission, upload file. So that's where you're going to upload your file. All right, awesome sauce. Absolutely one of my favorite weeks of class because I know the information that I've just shared with you can be revolutionary for your ability to communicate on paper, and not just on paper, but in your speech class. I've had students use this when they move on to other classes, and they've contacted me and said, oh, Miss C, that helps so much. And I'm like, yeah. See, I know it will help because I use these tools myself. So with that, I'm going to tell you that the next week's class is going to be all about tips and tricks and awesome things that you can know about writing that are going to make writing not so hard as you think it is. So just some fun ideas, some information I know is going to be beneficial to you. I'm going to share that with you next time. So with that, I'm going to close and bid you all a good day. As always, if you have any questions, send me a text message, 918-994-2324. Thank you.